Your great-grandmother had zero debt, no credit card, a full pantry, and never felt broke. And she did it during the worst financial crisis in American history. Most of us, with far more money and far more tools, still can't say the same thing. Today we're going to look at exactly how she did it and the 10 money rules she lived by, and why those same rules work just as well right now. And stay with me all the way to rule number 10, because that one's different and will probably surprise you. No budgets, no bank accounts, just the one thing your great grandmother understood about money and life that we've completely lost sight of. Rule number 1: cash is king. Never spend what you don't have. Here's something that might actually surprise you. The modern credit card, the kind where you can swipe today and deal with it later, didn't exist until 1950, when the Diners Club card was introduced. And even then, you had to pay the full balance at the end of every month. The revolving credit card, the kind where you can carry a balance month to month and get charged interest on it, didn't arrive until 1958. Your great-grandparents lived entirely without that option for most of their adult lives. But here's the thing. Even after credit cards became available, a lot of them never touched one. Not because they couldn't get approved, but because the idea of buying something they couldn't pay for right now felt genuinely dangerous to them, even morally wrong. And they had very good reasons to feel that way. They'd watched the 1920s unfold. Banks were lending freely. People bought homes, cars, and consumer goods on credit they didn't quite have. It felt like prosperity. Then came Black Tuesday, October 29th, 1929, the start of the Great Depression, and all that debt came due at once. People who owed money found themselves owing it during a time of collapsing incomes and frozen bank accounts. The lesson burned itself into a whole generation. If you don't have the money, you don't buy the thing. You wait, you save, you do without until you do have the money to pay for it. Today, Americans collectively carry over $1.2 trillion in credit card debt. The average household carrying a balance owes somewhere around $10,000 just on their cards, and the average interest rate on that debt has climbed to historic highs in recent years. Your great-grandmother would look at those numbers and feel physically ill. The modern version of this rule isn't extreme. It's not about cutting up every card and living off the grid. It's about one foundational shift in thinking. Spend from what you have, not from what you hope to have. Before any purchase, ask the question they asked every day. Can I actually pay for this right now? And if not, do I actually need it? Most of the time, the honest answer tells you everything. Rule number 2, the pantry rule. Always have more than you need. Walk into your great-grandmother's pantry and you'd have seen something almost unrecognizable by today's standards. Row after row of canning jars. Dried beans, cornmeal, oats, things that could keep a family fed for weeks, sometimes months, without a single trip to any store. This wasn't hoarding, it wasn't anxiety, it was strategy. For families during the Great Depression, the pantry was what stood between them and genuine hunger. Families who had preserved and stored food ate. Those who depended entirely on cash in hand and had to shop each week were often the ones who went without. Historical accounts from the 1930s are full of stories of women who could turn a nearly empty pantry into a week of meals. A soup bone stretched into 3 dinners. Day-old bread became a pudding. Wilting vegetables went into a pot that fed the whole family. One woman's account from that era described her mother's rule. No more than 4 hours from garden to jar. If something was ready to harvest, it went into a mason jar that same day. Nothing waited. Nothing was wasted. Because waste wasn't a nuisance back then. It was a genuine loss the family couldn't afford. Here's what's interesting about the pantry rule. It wasn't only about food. It was about building buffers. It was about building security against uncertainty. The pantry was their emergency fund. When money got genuinely tight, and it often did, a full pantry meant they didn't have to choose between groceries and the electric bill. The crisis that would flatten a family with no reserves was just an inconvenience for someone who'd spent all summer building theirs. The modern version of this rule looks like a 3 to 6 month minimum emergency fund in savings, a grocery strategy that reduces waste and builds a small stockpile over time, a mindset that values having more than enough, not for luxury but for security. The shelves look a little different today. The philosophy hasn't changed at all. Rule number 3, repair, don't replace. Squeeze every last drop of value out of everything you own. There's a phrase that practically defined how Depression-era families related to their possessions. 12 words that were less of a slogan and more of a survival code. Use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. Shoes wore out, you repaired them. Soles were completely gone. Some families cut new soles from old rubber tires. A shirt collar was fraying. You turned it, flipping the worn edge inward and the good fabric out so it could last another year. A pot had a hole, you patched it. Clothing too worn to mend anymore, you cut it into cleaning rags. Rags too tattered to use, you stuffed them into gaps in the walls for insulation. Nothing left that household until it had been used to its absolute last molecule of usefulness. That wasn't deprivation, that was discipline. And here's the deeper thing worth understanding. Depression-era families didn't just repair things because they had no choice. They learned how to repair things, taught their kids to repair things, and passed those skills down like a form of inheritance. Because they understood something we've largely forgotten. The skill to fix things is itself a kind of wealth. If you can fix your own car, mend your own clothes, maintain your own appliances, patch your own roof, you're not just saving money in the moment, you're insulating yourself from the economy. You become less dependent on needing to have cash available the exact instant something breaks. Today, we've built a consumer culture that actively discourages repair. Products are often engineered to fail at a predictable point. There's even a term for it, planned obsolescence. Warranties expire just as things start to go wrong. The entire system gently nudges you toward buying new, because the economy runs on that transaction. The counterculture move? Learn to fix things, or at least find out whether something is fixable before you replace it. Repair your shoes before you give up on them. Replace the belt in a dryer before you buy a new dryer. Sew the button back on. Patch the tire. Sharpen the knife. Your great-grandmother understood that the real cost of anything isn't only the price tag at the register, it's also the cost to replace it when it's gone. Rule number 4, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Never rely on a single source of income. By 1933, roughly 25% of the American workforce was unemployed. 1 in 4 people who wanted to work couldn't find work. For those who did have jobs, wages had often been slashed to a fraction of what they'd been. And for everyone in between, you found a way. The income strategies that came out of the Depression era were genuinely remarkable for their creativity and range. Families didn't sit and wait for one paycheck to save them. They layered income streams, sometimes a dozen small ones, until the total added up to something livable. Women took in laundry from neighbors who could still afford to pay. Men sold vegetables grown in their own gardens. Kids shined shoes, ran errands, sold newspapers, delivered goods. Families rented out a spare room, sometimes even a spare bed, and nearly everyone bartered skills. I'll fix your fence if you give me eggs for a month. I'll sew your daughter's dress if you give me flour and lard. Nobody called themselves entrepreneurs. They thought of themselves as surviving. But what they were actually building were income ecosystems, resilient layered webs of revenue that didn't collapse entirely when one strand broke. Most households today run on 1 or 2 income streams. For many families, it's a single salary, and that's a single point of potential failure. 1 job loss, 1 medical event, 1 unexpected expense away from real financial stress. The Depression generation understood this instinctively because they'd lived through exactly what happens when that single point fails, so they built around it. The modern version of this rule is, if anything, more accessible than it's ever been. Freelance work, online selling, renting space, consulting, teaching a skill. The avenues are genuinely vast. The Depression-era mindset here isn't about grinding yourself into the ground. It's about asking one honest question. Am I relying on a single income stream that could disappear without warning? And if the answer is yes, what's one thing you could build alongside it? They didn't call it diversification, but that's exactly what it was. Rule number 5, your neighbor is your safety net. Build community like your life depends on it. This might be the most powerful rule on the whole list, and the one we've lost most completely. During the Great Depression, Your neighbors were simultaneously your bank, your grocery store, your hardware store, and your social safety net, not metaphorically, literally. Historical accounts from the 1930s are full of extraordinary community arrangements that are almost hard to imagine today. In parts of Oklahoma, neighbors rotated shared ownership of a single cow so that multiple families could take turns having milk. In urban neighborhoods, women pooled their pantries to make communal soups that stretched much further than any one household could manage alone. Mobile canning stations traveled from town to town, teaching communities how to preserve food together. In Appalachia, neighbors pooled what little they had to keep local schools open when governments couldn't fund them. Church groups, civic organizations, and informal neighborhood networks stepped in to provide what official systems couldn't or wouldn't. It wasn't charity, it was something fundamentally different, a shared understanding that what belonged to you was also, in some real sense, available to the people around you, and that theirs was available to you. We've built a culture of radical self-sufficiency. Every household a fully self-contained economic unit, expected to buy everything it needs from the market and need nothing from the people next door. And it's expensive, deeply, quietly expensive. Think about what it costs to own every tool you might need occasionally, every piece of equipment that gets used twice a year, every service you pay a professional for because you don't know anyone nearby with that skill. Your great-grandmother's neighborhood was essentially a resource-sharing network. Tools were borrowed and returned. Skills were traded. Childcare was reciprocal. Food was shared in abundance and requested in scarcity. And nobody felt ashamed asking for help because everyone understood that the neighborhood itself was the safety net. Not a bank balance, not a government program. It was the people next door. The modern version of this isn't complicated. Know your neighbors. Actually know them. Build reciprocal relationships before you need them. Share what you have when you have too much. Ask for help when you genuinely need it. It's not likely that you'll be sharing a cow with your neighbors, but the financial value of a strong community is genuinely immeasurable, and it's one of the most underrated forms of wealth that exists. Before we move on, I would like to ask one small favor. If even one of these rules has struck a chord with you, please take a few seconds to subscribe to our channel so you'll be sure to never miss one of our videos. And let us know which rule so far has hit closest to home for you. Is it rule number 1? Rule number 3? Something else? We read every comment and we really want to know what's connecting with you most. Now let's get back to the video because the best rules are still ahead. Rule number 6. Grow something, even if it's just in a window box. The vegetable garden wasn't a hobby in the 1930s. It wasn't a wellness trend or an aesthetic choice. It was groceries. For millions of American families during the Depression, the garden was what stood between them and real hunger. Families with land who grew their own food ate. Those who depended entirely on cash to buy food sometimes didn't. One Depression-era account from Oklahoma captures this plainly. A man remembered his family as poor even before the Depression, but not noticeably different during it, because they had always grown nearly everything they ate, so they never had to go hungry. The people who really suffered, he said, were people in the cities who had no land and no way to grow anything. Their survival depended entirely on money, and money was exactly what almost nobody had. The garden meant food security that no economic crash could touch. You can lose a job, you can lose savings, your bank can fail, but if you understand soil and seeds and seasons, you have something the market simply can't take from you. Nobody's suggesting you need to grow all your own food. That's a full-time commitment most people can't make. But here's what's true. Even a small garden, even tomatoes on a patio, herbs in a kitchen window, or a few containers on a balcony, shifts your relationship to food in a way that's hard to fully explain until you've experienced it. You stop seeing food as purely a commodity to be purchased. You start understanding it as something that comes from effort, from soil, from care, from time. That understanding naturally reduces waste. It connects you to seasons. And in a genuine financial pinch, even a modest garden can meaningfully reduce a grocery bill. During World War II, About a decade after the Depression, Americans planted what they called victory gardens, millions of backyard plots that historians estimate provided somewhere around 40% of the country's fresh vegetables at the height of the war. They proved that ordinary people with ordinary backyards could meaningfully feed themselves when they decided to try. That capability hasn't disappeared. We've just stopped using it. Rule number 7: mind the pennies. Know where every dollar goes. Depression-era families essentially invented the envelope method, even if nobody called it that. The money came in. They divided it physically into categories: rent, food, fuel for heating, clothing for the kids, medicine, and whatever was left, if anything was left, went into a jar, a coffee tin, or sometimes quite literally under the mattress. Because by 1933, after nearly 9,000 banks had failed across the country and wiped out the lifetime savings of millions of Americans, a lot of families had decided that cash in hand felt safer than money in an institution. The distrust was that deep. In fact, President Roosevelt himself, in one of his famous fireside chats, had to specifically reassure the nation that it was safer to keep your money in a reopened bank than under the mattress. That's how badly the faith had eroded. But beyond where they put the money, here's what really mattered. They knew to the penny where it was going. Every single dollar had a destination before it left the house. There were no mystery charges, no forgotten subscriptions, no end-of-month conversations that started with, "I don't know, it just disappeared." They had to know. The margin for error was zero. Guessing was not an option. Research consistently shows that most people significantly underestimate their monthly spending, sometimes by a few $100s or more. Subscriptions auto-renew. Small daily purchases accumulate without registering emotionally as real spending. Convenience costs creep in so gradually you stop noticing them. Your great-grandmother didn't have this problem, not because she was more disciplined or smarter, but because every transaction was physical. Every dollar she spent, she felt leave her hand. That tactile reality created a constant, unavoidable awareness of money moving. There was no abstraction, no swipe and forget, just cash, counted out, handed over, and gone. The modern version of this rule is simple to say and genuinely hard to consistently do. Track everything, not to punish yourself, not to feel guilty, but to see clearly. Once a month, sit down and actually look at where the money went. Most people find at least one or two places that truly surprise them, and that surprise may be worth hundreds of dollars or more a year. Rule number 8: debt is the enemy. Treat it like one. Sometime in the 1920s, America began what historians call its transition into a creditor society. Banks started lending freely. Regular people borrowed for homes, cars, and consumer goods, sometimes things they honestly couldn't afford. It felt like abundance, like progress. Then 1929 arrived, and everything changed at once. Families who had taken on debt in the good years now owed it against shrinking wages and collapsing bank accounts. And here's the brutal detail that most people don't know. As prices and wages fell during the Depression, sometimes by 20 to 50%, the actual dollar amounts of the debt didn't fall with them. So the real burden of every loan and mortgage actually got heavier as the economy got worse. A family that owed $2,000 on a mortgage in 1929 still owed $2,000 in 1932, but the dollars they were using to pay it back were now worth significantly more relative to their income, because income had collapsed. The math was unforgiving. People who had borrowed heavily were crushed. Those who had lived without debt, or who had worked hard to eliminate what they owed, had options. They could adapt. They could weather it. The lesson burned itself permanently into a whole generation, and it showed. Even after the Depression ended, even through the prosperity of the 1950s and 60s, Depression survivors remained notoriously conservative spenders. They were hesitant to take on loans. They paid cash when they could. They lived below their means even when they didn't have to. They weren't being irrational. They were people who had felt what debt does when the economy turns. They never wanted to feel it again. Here's what debt actually does. It doesn't just make things cost more. It makes you less free. Every month you carry a balance, A piece of your future income is already spoken for before you've earned it, before you've made any choices about it. You're paying for yesterday with tomorrow. The modern application of this rule is uncomfortable to hear, but exceedingly important. If you carry consumer debt, especially high interest credit card debt, treating it like an emergency is the right response, because it is one. Every dollar of that debt is a claim on your future self. Eliminating it is one of the highest guaranteed returns you can generate on your money. Your great grandparents didn't need a financial advisor to tell them that. They'd lived the proof. Rule number 9: save first, spend what's left. This rule sounds simple, and it is simple, but simple and easy are very different things, and the gap between them is where most people's savings disappear. Depression-era families didn't save what was left at the end of the month. There was almost never anything left at the end of the month. What they did instead was make saving the first act of the budget, not the last. Money came in, and before anything else happened, a portion went somewhere it couldn't be easily touched. This wasn't about having a large income. Most Depression-era families were saving on incredibly thin margins. A dime here, a quarter there. Coffee tins and mason jars and canvas pouches stuffed under floorboards. Change jars that accumulated slowly across months, then years. What they understood, without ever calling it behavioral economics, is something researchers now confirm with data. If you wait to save what's left, you'll almost never save anything. The money always finds a use. But if you save before you spend, even a small amount, that money tends to stay saved because you never had a chance to spend it. Pay yourself first. Most of us have heard that phrase. We've nodded at it in a podcast or a book and then done nothing with it. But for the Depression generation, it wasn't a financial concept from a self-help book. It was a survival habit, so ingrained it had stopped being a conscious choice. The modern version of this rule is definitely achievable, mainly because technology makes it easier than it's ever been. All you have to do is set up an automatic transfer to savings on the day after every paycheck. Make it disappear before you even see it in your checking account. Start small if you need to. $25 a paycheck, $50. The amount matters far less than the consistency. Because the habit, built and maintained over years and decades, is everything. It's how people with ordinary incomes build extraordinary security. It's how your great-grandparents, earning factory wages and farm wages, somehow managed to leave something behind. Rule number 10: practice contentment. Want less, enjoy more. This is the rule that ties everything else together. It's also the one nobody talks about in personal finance content, because it doesn't fit neatly into a spreadsheet or financial graph. And it's the hardest rule on the list to follow, not because it requires the most effort, but because everything in our modern world is specifically engineered to make it nearly impossible. Let's be honest about what's happening to us every single day. We carry devices that connect us to a constant stream of advertising, social comparison, and carefully manufactured desire. Every scroll surfaces something we didn't know we wanted until we saw it. Every algorithm learns in granular detail what triggers that particular mild ache of wanting, and then serves us more of it, relentlessly and invisibly. We are being marketed to every waking hour of our lives by systems more sophisticated than anything ever built in human history, all toward a single purpose: make us feel like we don't have enough, so we'll buy more. Your great-grandmother didn't live in that world. Her world had a radio program in the evening, a card game with neighbors on a Friday night, a shared meal that took hours to make and minutes to eat and left everyone feeling genuinely satisfied. A treat meant something that actually felt special because it didn't happen constantly. Contentment wasn't a philosophical ideal for her. It was just Tuesday. And here's the good thing. Contentment is a learnable skill, not a personality trait you're born with, not something you either have or you don't. A skill, which means you get better at it the more you practice it. Here's what your great-grandparents practiced every day without calling it anything. Gratitude for what was present. Genuine attention to small pleasures. Good bread. A warm room. A working lamp. A kid laughing in the yard. Deep investment in the things that cost nothing: community, craft, conversation, time outdoors, work done well. And they practiced delay, not buying something the moment they felt the pull of wanting it, sitting with that feeling for a week, a month, and discovering usually that it faded, that it had been a feeling and not a need. The depression forced that practice on them. We have to choose it voluntarily, and choosing it is harder because the pressure to do otherwise is constant and sophisticated and very well funded. But it's not impossible, and it might be the single most powerful financial move any of us can make. Because wanting less doesn't mean having less, it means being free. And real financial freedom has always started, in every generation, with the willingness to say, "What I have is enough." Here's a recap of the 10 rules our great-grandparents lived by. Number 1. Cash is king. Spend from what you have, not from what you hope to have. Number 2. Build your pantry. It's your buffer against the unexpected. Start today, even if it's small. Number 3. Repair before you replace. Learn a skill. Fix something. Number 4. Build multiple streams of income. One income is one point of potential failure. Number 5. Know your neighbors. Build community before you need it. Number 6. Grow something. Anything. Reconnect with where food actually comes from. Number 7. Track every dollar. Know where it goes before it's gone. Number 8. Treat debt like an enemy, because it is. Number 9. Save first, spend what's left. Number 10. Want less, enjoy what you have, practice contentment. None of these rules require a high income. None require a fancy degree or a fancy strategy or the right market conditions. They require something simpler and rarer. They require the willingness to live intentionally, to think before spending, to build while times are good, to value what you have while you still have it. The generations who survived the Depression didn't just endure hard times. They built habits that lasted a lifetime. Habits that, even in the good years that followed, kept them grounded, solvent, and genuinely at peace with their money. We are their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, and some of you who are watching may even be their great-great-grandchildren. We inherited their genes. We just forgot to inherit the wisdom that carried them through. But here's the point. It's not too late to learn that wisdom and bring it back. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to go through a depression to learn it. You just have to be willing to look at how they lived, take it seriously, and start. If this video made you see money a little differently, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to learn more about timeless money principles, subscribe to our channel and make sure to watch the next video linked at the end. We'll see you in the next video.